Hey, left, right, out. I just wanted to say a few things. Obviously, I'm just relaxing. Today we had an interesting day in the market. Um, Early on, nothing much going on, and then the Fed minutes came out, which are very interesting. A lot more hawkish than most anticipated. Um, but there's something, eerie in there, and like I've said before, there's not much they can really do at this point. They got one of two choices. They can push this further until it collapses on itself, or they can cause a severe recession. So we're already in what I would deem a depression over the last so many years. If you take actual rate of inflation with and use that as a deflator. But anyway, I need to stop getting in those rabbit holes. But so what we're looking at now, it seems odd. They came out, and of course there's a lot of they want to ramp up ending their um, bond purchasing, backstopping, essentially. So I know they were cutting it by 30 billion. I think from last one. I haven't read through all the minutes, so I didn't see how fast they actually wanted to. But it looks like they're looking at possible rate hikes in March, and even bond selling, which is another policy thing. But here's the thing about that. That's what struck me, and that's why I wanted to talk about is, okay, well, look at all these bonds that they are purchasing now in order to keep the interest rates low. They're at like a negative real rate and a very low nominal rate on that actual treasury bond or note. And let's say you want to go back out there and sell. We know that we got to, let's just call it CPI, the inflation rate. At least that's how, people are looking at it. The rising cost of living, it's close to 7%. So you are going to go out into the real market and sell these supposed assets out there. They have a coupon rate of close, let's call it essentially zero to whatever, 0.5%, or if it's a 10-year, whatever, a 1.5%, or wherever they sold it out, or however, whatever paper that they're selling that they're holding on the balance sheet. And I'm not up to date on the composition of it, like for versus long term for short term. Last time I checked, there was a lot of short term paper that was on their balance sheet, but or from what we know of their holdings, a lot of short term stuff. Just because you can kind of insinuate that from the amount of short term paper that the Treasury itself is issued, and that the Fed is backstopped like that. They've been buying billions and billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars of that over the last couple of years. But so if they come out there with that, think about the losses that the Fed is actually going to take in that, because you're going to have it discounted, because people aren't going to they're going to demand a higher rate, or any sane person, unless they got it rigged, which they rig a lot of things where their primary dealers take up that slack and take those losses as well, or however the case, because they're going to take somebody's going to take a loss, whether they take they purchase it at par and take the loss between the actual rate of inflation, of the devaluation of the currency compared to what they're going to get back, or the Fed taking the loss and having to discount the bond to the an actual market rate, interest rate. So we'll see what happens. It's pretty interesting that they said that. I don't even know if that will actually happen. Here's what I'm saying, because they were talking about a rate hike. Like I said, I don't think they can ever get past 1% at this point, at this level, because last time they got the 2.25. Now we're way over leveraged on that. Their balance sheet has exploded beyond anything historically that we know of in the known universe. And we've inflated our way into oblivion. So I say 1.5%, just being generous. Like, in fact, I think they might get to a 0.5%. So if you think that this is very hawkish, here's what I like to say is, don't you worry. I mean, the market reacted to this. We might actually get an actual correction, which would be actually, that's what should happen. The market's so disconnected from any valuation. There's no pricing mechanism involved hardly at all. But what will happen is the Fed will be back. So don't worry. Like the Terminator, they'll be back. All right. They're not going away. Once they get to a 0.5% or whatever it is, I said 1.5 tops. Once they get to a 0.5%, and starting around when they end this whole bond purchasing thing, when they actually make the first rate hike, once they get to a 0.5%, you're going to start seeing the wheels start coming off a lot of this, and they will be back in buying buying, backstopping the treasury market, backstopping the stock market, buying ETFs, buying all sorts of things. They will revamp QE. They will drop interest rates back down. But then, like I said, that's what we kind of expect. That's what we think they're going to do, because once the market starts falling off, not that the inflation rate is going to fall off, because that money's out there, and then you have a money multiplier effect. You have things, the credit markets for the individual and the consumer level are still going. I mean, you still have people over leveraged. They're still taking out student debt. They're still creating money out of nothing, essentially, and there's still no reserve in the banking system. So they're willy-nilly creating stuff. I mean, it's still incredible. So I predict that they will be back in the market, because they have two choices, really. They can allow us to go into a recession, or they can mask it over and create a further on, I don't know how much further we can actually go, great deep recession, but they think that they can keep dancing on this razor's edge. So instead of just taking the correction now, we'll just continue dancing on this knife razor edge, and hopefully we can keep the music playing before it turns off and somebody will, find a seat, But so you had that. I've just glanced over some of the minutes, and they mentioned stuff with regards to social unrest and living expenses. A lot of the members have, and I'm going to read through it again more intensively when it's posted on their page, where I can get to. It's probably posted there right now, but usually I go through it. There is an accelerating risk. It seems like they're acknowledging of not. To me, if you read between the lines, like a runaway type inflation. Which here's another thing. So I was at the store today, and I mean, eggs had jumped like God knows how much, astronomical. It went from 8 something to $10 for a 60 pack of eggs, and then if you take that from a year, it was I want to say $6.90 or $6. It was pretty much the prices within a year roughly have gone up 40% on that set of eggs that I normally get. Prices have gone up in other regards and different food items. I was just really noticing when I got the eggs today. I looked at all these other things and I was like, holy crap. Like, this is insane, some of the prices that are going up. And the other thing about it is reminiscent of the first few months of COVID. The pasta area in some of these grocery stores is just wiped out, completely wiped out. And I don't know, some of that could be transitioning from higher pricing. We're seeing food transition, or there could be supply chain. I mean, this is just a strict observation. So all you can see is the observation, and we can look at the propaganda. And I know there is supply chain issues, there's labor issues, there's all sorts of issues, but I'm going to look at it and I'm going to draw reasonable hypothesis from just observing the counter space in what I know around me. So I'm like looking at this thing, I'm thinking, well, one, I know that chicken prices here are astronomical now. Egg prices astronomical. Pasta prices are still roughly the same. So if I'm a family and I'm on a budget or whatnot, I might now be transitioning from eating a lot more meat, a lot more chicken. Transitioning from eating those items and going to the pastas. I thought about that. And I'm sure there's nuance to this. So I'm sure that's part of it. Because even myself, I was like, well, I'm going to start eating. Not that it is good for you. You need some meat. I want to start cutting down on that so that I can afford to eat and go to the pasta section. And I even make my own pasta just to cut those costs. But for 82 cents, I'll grab a thing of fettuccine or whatever, come up with something, do something creative with it. But people could be doing that. Of course, then you can have supply issues. Because here's what else I know. It's just I'm using my own observation around me, and this is what the reasonable man would assert. So I go to these other establishments, whether it be fast food establishments or whether it be I'm doing other things. I'm not purchasing fast food. Just let you I'll let you know that, because fast food itself is also increasing in price. People are paying astronomical amounts for fast food. It's crazy. I think I've already told the story. I was on the Navajo reservation driving to Vegas, and I stopped to get just a number 2 meal, if you know what that is, like a quarter pounder. It was like $12, and I just walked out because I was not going to pay $12 for that. Granted, I didn't order it all the way through, so they had to make it. I wouldn't do that. If I did that, I'd have to pay for it. But I looked at the price subtotal. I was like, I'm out of here. There's no way I'm paying $12 for a soda, medium fry, and whatever that is, So that is increasing. But then I also see employees, even though, I mean, I see a lot of businesses being turned away because you have other COVID related issues. I don't know if my lighting just changed or a light bulb went out. Anyway, I'll wrap this up. But COVID related issues that are still being implemented, these weird policies so the lobbies will be open one day, the lobbies will be closed the other day, weird hours. I can see people leaving and not going through this. So they're losing business. The employees are very slow in a lot of these places. So I know I'm going off a different rabbit hole, but it's just an observation. These are observations I see around me in my day to day, and it makes me feel, especially today, it really hit me when I was in that pasta aisle, and there was no pasta besides like some wheat, 100% wheat pasta, which that's what I grabbed, but literally no pasta. And like the racks, I was in Walmart of pasta, there's a whole section dedicated to that area, or pretty much a whole aisle, none. And the last time I seen that was in North Dakota in the beginning of the COVID panic. And very sporadically throughout this whole 2-year span, I've seen that. But this one, it really hit me. I was like, man, and I even like accidentally I just like kind of blurted it out. I was like, man, what are we in, North Korea? I mean, I feel like I'm living in Venezuela or something. I said something like that because there was somebody else right there. Just like kind of cracked it as a quip joke, because like, what is this? Like, I don't ever remember growing up or being anywhere in America where we're a land of abundance typically, and in a free market that happens. It's like I'm grasping without looking at all this data that I know about, but just as an average person, I'm trying to grasp what the average person be thinking. It's like, well, what is going on here? What is happening to the country? But then again, then you take it, the average person, I'm trying to think like that. They're watching whatever the regular news, or actually they're not. If you look at the ratings, they're not watching it, but the people that are, and they're being told that everything is great, everything is good. This is just over demand, which you can say there's a little bit of excess, because you printed all this money. So now you've really skewed the demand supply curves and where they intersect by essentially devaluing the money. But you're wondering, you're getting multiple stimulus from different sources, a lot of them telling you that everything is good, but then your eyes are showing you how bad things are. So it's interesting to see people's takes on these occurrences when they're out in the real world. And it's like, do you believe your lying eyes? And I notice a lot of people kind of just glaze over it, and they don't even acknowledge it, because it's like, well, they're everybody else around them and everybody's telling them it's good, so they kind of go along with the group. And there is like a mass psychosis, and that's another thing we can talk about with regards to other topics. But there is a mass psychosis with regards to the economy. It has been for tens of or decades, but it's really amped up here within this COVID era. Anyway, I just wanted to lay that one out and talk more about the Fed, but and then my own personal experience today with the price in the grocery store, which was, like I said, I've noticed it throughout last year, but all of a sudden, bam, like it was like pent up and flick. Prices just jumped in this area, and I don't know if you've noticed that in your area, but I get to travel. I travel a lot, mainly in the Midwest and the West. So I have I guess a lot of anecdotal data, a lot of observations, stories from other people, and then I get to see these other stores in different segments of the country. So I have a pretty good grasp, at least what the flyover country, what most of the country is feeling. Maybe not in the metropolitan areas. I'm sure it's completely different there. I don't know. But it's not good, and it hasn't been good, and it seems to be getting worse in various segments. And I mentioned in the last video, used cars, and just that market itself. And then we didn't even get into foreign policy. If we get into foreign policy, now we're seeing a lot of stuff going on there. I brought up Turkey as a canary in the coal mine. There's some interesting things going over there with the collapse. The government's really clamping down on any kind of dollar hedging against the lira. You have Kazakhstan. I believe it's Kazakhstan. They're having some issues. Now they're calling on the Russians to come and help them out. What will we do? I don't know. Nothing, essentially. Ukraine, there's a lot of built that's getting hot, or not hot yet, but we can argue whether it's hot or not, because we talk about Crimea. That was hot, and there's like a pseudo hot war going in there, but the buildup of troops, and it's kind of like a positioning on the chessboard. But then you look at that in relationship to Taiwan. Taiwan is a huge player in the semiconductor industry, which hopefully we can change that a little bit, at least diversify our supply chain there. But right now it is, and it happens to be on the target of China. But one of the other things they don't talk about, or you don't hear too much about, is the India game on that. The India and China clashing over borders, and just that general disgruntledness between those two nuclear powers. It's there's a lot of potential catastrophes out there, and not to mention the catastrophe. And what is fueling this fire is a lot of central banks or whatnot. But anyway, I'm going to leave it there, and we'll talk again later. And there's too many stories to go on. I almost need someone to have a conversation with here in order, and keep reminding me of these different stories, because I go through them and then I was like, oh, I'll talk about this, but then these things pop in there because I like economics, and I enjoy that finance side. It's just it's one of those things that have really you really see how things are manipulated when you get into the brass tacks of how economics is manipulated in society, and who really runs things. But anyway, I'll talk to you later. Peace.